Hi, welcome to the Chill podcast with Dustin and Alex. Today's special guest is Rachel Zetah Becker. Um, she's an artist from somewhere in the world and is also an earthling. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Rachel. So I'm from Silt, Colorado. Silt, like the type of dirt, which is in western Colorado, in between Glenwood Springs and Rifle. A little known town, but that's where I grew up. And yeah, I'm an artist and graphic designer, and proud to be an Earthling.
Very cool. We usually like to start off the podcast with a little game where we do a couple acronyms for the word chill. Um, and I'll go ahead and get us started and we'll just go around in a little circle. Cramps have invaded La La Land. Go ahead, Rachel.
Changing hands and lost language.
Children harness irradiated lamb lard.
Christmas holdout introspects languish.
Clinging hearts, icy love letters.
Cops hoard imitation log lines.
Creeper hangout in large latrine.
Crackers have itchy long legs.
Shit, the last one I have written down only has one L. Cranberry hair ignites loudly, and then like a comma, Larry.
Yeah.
Aha! Got that second one.
My last one, crash hard in London lab.
Crash hard in London lab. Cosmonauts have idle, lengthy logs.
Gotta watch out for the idle and lengthy logs. Those are the ones. Well, sweet. Thank you for joining us on the podcast, Rachel. It's nice to talk with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I thought that I would just start with a couple of questions about your Instagram, Church of Earth. One thing that I find pretty interesting about it is that it's listed as a religious organization. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So Church of Earth was a concept that came to me in 2016. I was really interested in religion. I mean, I'm still interested in religion, but at the time I was living at Shambhala Mountain Center, which is a Buddhist retreat center north of Fort Collins. And I was really grappling with all these things that were happening in the world and really angry and really wanting to do something about just like climate change and all these issues I was seeing. And I just heard about this space that was in Fort Collins called the Art Lab, which is a free space for artists to use and just kind of like you can rent it for however, like 2 weeks or a month to do any kind of project. And so I heard about that and was like, I should make a church because I had never belonged to a church growing up. My parents were ex-Catholics and were very kind of traumatized by the church. But I was always fascinated by religious and sacred spaces and was like really interested in holy water and just all the rituals and those kind of types of things. And so I was like, what is a space that I feel like could be meaningful to me that I could belong to? And for me, it's always been being in nature and like going on hikes or going camping and just being exposed to wilderness is where I find like healing and have like a spiritual connection. So for me, it was like, my church is the earth. And I had this idea of just kind of creating an installation of what that church would be in my imagination. So that's what I did initially. I just made a bunch of art that kind of expressed my relationship to the earth, and also just the universe, I guess, and where just kind of like the nature aspect, like the science aspect, and also the spirituality of just like the planet that we're like living on this planet. So yeah, that's how it started, as just kind of an experiment. And I realized that I wanted to keep exploring that concept and try to invite other people to participate in that with me. And so yeah, it's sort of a religious organization. Like we were having community meetings for a while before the pandemic hit. And we did like 3 years in a row of these art shows on Earth Day. And have done like a series of other community events. So there's some community around it, but it's not, I mean, I don't know if it would be considered an actual like real church, but I think it's, for me, it's always been, the idea behind it was that everyone is welcome. Like there's no one that would be excluded from it, because like we're all on this planet together. So it was kind of like a funny, ironic idea that was sort of poking fun at religion, while at the same time being earnestly interested in like, how do we actually reconnect with the earth and reconnect to our own bodies, and just like that relationship, which to me, there was a lot of pain and grief in just seeing how disconnected we become from nature and from the wild, and just from like where all of our materials come from, you know. There's obviously a huge disconnect there. So that was my kind of fun, experimental, but also serious way of trying to address that problem. And when I saw that it was an option on Instagram to be a religious organization, I was like, yeah.
That's great. That's great. So at the art lab, like installation or show you did you have like services and live events as well, or was it mostly just sort of a space for people to walk in? Or
Yeah, so it's funny. We didn't have any services exactly, but we did. I had a couple of friends that led meditation sessions. So we did that, and then we had an open mic night and a couple other workshops. I think the following year, so the first year was all just my own art, because it was just like, this is just an experiment. I don't know what I'm doing. And the next year I invited other people to contribute their own art. And we had someone do like a composting workshop, and brought in a bunch of worms and dirt, and just like taught people how to compost, and talked about permaculture. And we did another open mic night, and we did like a screening of that movie, Fern Gully. Have you seen that?
yeah, hell yeah.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, it's like a early 1990s animated movie about these fairies that are trying to protect the rainforest. It's pretty awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, so it was like multiple events happening within the spaces in addition to the artwork.
That's awesome.
What was your experience with the open mics? They can be pretty interesting.
Yeah, my first experience facilitating one was definitely interesting. I don't think I knew what I was getting into, because I wanted it to be a space where anyone can come up and share anything. Like I didn't want to censor anybody. Wanted everyone to be welcome, but there were definitely people that went on way longer than they needed to. And I was feeling like, what do I do? How do I intervene? And yeah, just like make this a place that's like, that feels good for everyone. While also like making sure that people have equal space to share what they have to share.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, people were like pretty raw, and just like some people just got up and said stuff, and other people performed music or, you know, other things. So yeah, it was pretty eclectic.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's that's always the dilemma, right? Is not wanting to censor anybody, but then every once in a while at an open mic night, about halfway through, you're like, man, I wish somebody would censor this. It's that's
Yeah.
a grind. Did you find that having the open mic in the context of like your art show gave it some thematic unity, or and like the Church of Earth in general, or was that still pretty all over the place content wise?
Um, yeah, I don't think it really connected with the themes at all. It was pretty all over the place. Yeah, I think that would be something, if I was to do that again, to kind of facilitate a little bit better as far as just like guiding the content. Like, let's talk about like one specific theme. That would probably be more interesting, honestly, too. Sometimes I feel like having that constriction or having the limit allows for like more creativity to come out too. So yeah, it's a funny thing to think about, because I didn't even consider at the time. I was just like, well, just see what people have to say. And yeah, it was like a whole variety.
Yeah, that's definitely some of the charm of it too. Like open mics is the sort of chaotic nature of it, and like at least for me, when like people transgress those like time boundaries, one of like my most interesting memories of an open mic is like this one guy that would always go over the time, and one day the facilitator just had enough of it, and he like walked up and like took the microphone away from him, and it was just, I don't know, it's just so funny to me. I don't know why.
Yeah,
I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
for a while, I was running an open mic night in Longmont at a coffee shop, and there was this guy, and God bless him, he was doing his thing, but he was an older guy, and I'm sure everyone who has been to any sort of open mic night in the state of Colorado would recognize both the type of man and this man, whose name escapes me at the moment. But he would go and he explained it to me once, because I was like, man, I see this guy all the time, but he's always like just catching the tail end of our open mic. And it's because he would time it, and he would take the bus around the state, and he'd catch like 6 open mics in a night. And he went out and he had a calendar of like all the open mics in like Boulder, Denver, Longmont, and Fort Collins, and a bus pass, and just made as many of them as he could every week. And he would just get on the list, do his thing, and then leave to go catch a bus to the next one. And it always cracked me up, because it was like, man, this guy has like a more professional schedule than anybody I've met, but for like 3-minute sets across the
What was he sharing?
it's mostly like poetry. But then he was one of those guys who sometimes would just kind of be talking. It just seemed like he enjoyed having the audience. Which, who doesn't?
For sure.
But yeah, there's like the idea of an open mic circuit has always sort of cracked me up. You know, there are people trying to make all the stops.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. Did he have a long white beard?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did.
Did he go by the name White Owl? Because that guy showed up at ours.
I don't remember. I think I would have remembered White Owl, but maybe he's switched his monikers.
Okay,
Yeah,
because
it could very well be.
he gave me a stuffed animal, and he gave me some rocks.
Wow, were they nice rocks?
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, actually, one of them is really nice. He was like, "This is a special one." I was like, "Dang."
That's great.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they say the arts don't pay. That's great.
Yeah, it was all worth it.
Yep. For that one rock, everything was leading towards that.
I still have it. I don't have the stuffed chihuahua anymore, but
Yeah, that's on the aftermarket. It's going for high prices, being
don't even
sold
remember.
everywhere.
Yep.
Um, so I mean, that's one thing that I really like about the open mic sort of community, I suppose you could call it too. Another thing that I like is, yeah, the different personalities that show up, and like I recognize that I'm like a big part of that as well. Like I almost go, I think I definitely found myself in like open mic communities a little bit, like gained a better understanding of who I am from going and sharing and kind of getting over being in my body in front of like a group of people. You know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. It can be really vulnerable.
Yep. So
Yeah.
yeah. Did you have anything more to say on that, or go to another question?
I don't think so. Yeah. We can go on to whatever. I mean, I can talk about the art shows and that stuff forever, but
For sure.
yeah.
I think this next one ties into that. Like, because I like the origin story of Church of Earth, and I'm wondering how your continuing art practice like reflects the mission of empowering individuals to make the changes that will be necessary for our survival and like global earth healing. And like I think maybe even the next question after that ties into it, like why is what's the reason for naming the newsletter Good News? I know now I think that it has a different name, but there's still like a good news section, and I know that I've always enjoyed that that's in there, like that, 10 things that like are still like good in the world. Because it seems like you're just constantly bombarded with like information of how it's bad, and then it's like, oh, good news. I enjoy that.
That's pretty good if you can get to 10 too. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a good week.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard. At least with like the news.
Hmm.
Yeah, I guess that makes me have to think a little bit more. So yeah, I think what was really important to me from the beginning with this project was to kind of empower people to just like to like recover their own sense of power, I guess. I feel like a lot of aspects of our society kind of disempower us in a lot of ways. Or at least for me, like I think in order to like assimilate or fit in, I suppressed a lot of aspects of myself, and suppressed a lot of like my own like desires to do things in the world because it was not what everybody else was doing. Um, and so like part of even the initial installation, I built this altar in the center, and it had a mirror as the centerpiece of the altar so that someone could come and see themselves as like the object of worship. I mean, not in like a narcissistic way, but just in a way like, wow, I have inherent value. Um, and like I'm just as worthy as anyone else to do what needs to be done, kind of thing. um, so yeah, because I think the other point for me is that there is so much healing and just like joy available in nature and just like as part of living on earth. Like I'm just really grateful that I was able to experience that as a kid, where my parents would take us out camping and hiking all the time, and while my brother and I would complain about it a lot, like I was able to see that there's this vast wilderness out there that we can experience, and that like I feel more relaxed. I feel more like myself when I'm in those places. And so that's available to us as humans. And I think, so yeah, just like really what it's about for me is empowering people to take their own healing seriously or believe in their own healing, or like whatever you want to call it, whether it's healing or just living more authentically as themselves. So yeah, and then as far as like the artwork I'm doing now, I am like working a lot with trash, and I don't know, just thinking about trash and the phenomenon of it is really interesting to me. And kind of, I'll just go along. I used to take walks and just pick up every piece of trash I found because it was so frustrating. And then I realized like I can't freaking do that. Like that's also not my responsibility solely. So what I started to do is just like find pieces that were interesting and take them home, and then kind of arrange them into designs that to me like evoke like some sort of like mystery or sacredness. You're creating sacred art out of trash to recover this idea that like trash is an object that originally came from the earth, like the materials that made that came from the earth. And so like what if we were able to view all those materials as sacred and like treat them as such, remembering that like that's the source of everything that we have. So yeah, it's kind of like transmuting all the crap into something that's like beautiful, and just like remembering that yeah, there's more to it, I guess, than it's like originally seen.
That's definitely like a really crazy kind of mind-blowing concept, that everything that we see and like interact with comes from the earth. Can't escape it. And yeah, that includes the trash. And yeah, I really enjoy the trash art that I saw on your website, and like the process of finding it and something like working around it and with it and its themes is really interesting to me. Like how you find what's interesting and then work with that. And it seems like you're speaking with the earth at the same time, like um, sort of like seeing the dirty and like the infinite plastic label of, you know, purified drinking water next to like a turtle trying to make it out to water. And also I think there's a lot of humor in it as well, with like the Aquafina, you know, like this marketed image of like pure like ice water, and then it's like sitting on top of like a seal or something, you know. And it's I don't know, could you, I mean, I don't know if I really have a question, but
Yeah, I mean, I definitely do find a lot of humor in it. It's kind of like a dry, ironic humor that's like also kind of fucked up. It's like,
yeah.
you know, it's just kind of, to me, when I see all these corporate labels, um, there is a sense of irony. I mean, there's this new packaging that it's like these sealable air packages. I don't know if you've seen those, like that you'll get. It's kind of like bubble wrap, but it's just like air in plastic. And there's
Yeah.
this new brand called Earth Aware, and it's like this green packaging, but it's like probably compostable plastic or something, or recycled plastic. But just the way that companies will brand themselves to be green or natural, and yet
Yeah.
see this trash stuck in a bush, and I'm just like, that's like so hilarious to me. And it's also like not funny, but it's like,
Right.
it's just,
Yeah.
I don't know, there's an irony and sort of also a sadness in the sense of like, oh, there's like, it's interesting to me when there's an intention to be aware, or there's like some sense of awareness that, oh, we're connected, we're part of this whole ecosystem, but it's not taking it to the step to where it actually makes a difference. You know, it's just all like, I forget the term, but it's all bullshit basically.
Yeah.
And I think that's, I don't know, it's funny and sad, and just like where we're at. It's just kind of like the reality of the situation right now. And I think
Yeah.
that, you know, things are changing for sure, but there's a lot of surface level talk and not a lot of like actually understanding or being willing to make the changes that like actually are going to matter.
I think
It's,
it's
go
great
ahead,
though what
Jess.
you do, because you're taking like, yeah, products like that that are paying a certain amount of like lip service to serious environmental concerns, and then you're using that, the material of and also the product of that lip service to like have a sincere conversation about it, is like kind of a really fun thing, because it's the same conversation but you're changing the intent just in like by changing the content or the context. Do you work with like a stockpile of material? Like do you have like a hoard of like things that you've picked up? Or is it more like a couple things at a time that then you like work on and hammer out until that's done? Or do you have like like a pile, for lack of a better word, of like stuff that you're working with?
I definitely have a trash pile. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of a problem. Because it's everywhere. It's like all my art supplies are free. And yeah, it's actually a project that I've been wanting to work on in the next month or so. It's just like going through and organizing all my little trash pieces, because I kind of forget what I have. I mean, it's interesting. There's like all kinds of different categories. There's cardboard pieces. There's like little tiny little plastic chunks of, I don't even know what they're from. There was actually this piece of pink styrofoam that I kept driving by on the highway, and I was like, oh, I want to stop and get that. Um, and I ended up doing it like a month later. And by that point, the pink had faded a lot, so it wasn't exactly the same pink. But I don't know. I kind of appreciate that a lot too, when you can see that it's been worn down by the sun or when there's dirt on it. Like I actually want to keep the dirt on there as I'm making the piece, just to show like this is part of a context. Like this was part of, you know, a field of grass or something, like it's interesting to me when the environment starts to absorb the trash back and it almost becomes part of the landscape again, because that's inevitably going to happen. But yeah, I definitely have a huge collection.
Yeah, it coming back into the like environment, that's going to happen just over the course of like millions and billions of years. And like I kind of wonder um yeah, my question that I was coming up with like is like kind of a thing is, do you trash the trash, and it seems like you don't. Like it seems like you keep it. And a thing that's kind of related to that question is like sort of the, where do you store it? Because I remember once when I was taking some class about like museum stuff, that like art like this a lot has to go into consideration of like bugs and like the different types of dirt that might come out of it in a museum setting. But like when you're having it at home, is that like a concern for you, or is it just kind of like a part of your
Yeah.
process?
It's interesting that you bring up museums, because I started working at the Aspen Art Museum this past year,
Oh, cool.
on the installation team. And so I've gotten to see like behind the scenes when we get someone's artwork, and it comes in these huge crates, and it's all like very meticulously packaged so that nothing gets broken. And just like seeing what it's like from an art handler's perspective to actually deal with art. And sometimes when things are really flimsy and fragile, it's really frustrating, you know. But you are like super careful not to damage the art. And with my pieces, it's kind of funny, because I think something that I want to maybe try to explore is, because right now my pieces are pretty flimsy, like they're all made on found objects, so a lot of it is like pieces of foam that you could easily just like crush.
Mm-hmm.
And so in some sense it's like it would be cool to make things a little bit more structurally sound, so that they could stand the test of time, I guess, or just like not break immediately. But also at the same time, it's kind of like the whole nature of the piece itself is that it is ephemeral because it's made out of trash. Like these objects were already on their way to the landfill. And so like theoretically you could just throw my whole artwork in the trash and it wouldn't like make that much of a difference,
Yeah, it's
you know?
yeah, because like it kind of creates a weird loop or sort of I mean, speaking of which, like Portal, like it's like how do you deal because the trash just doesn't go away. You know what I mean? Like just because you throw it in the garbage doesn't mean that it is magically gone, which is like what we've been sort of programmed to think is that if once we throw it in the trash, like it's not our problem anymore. But that like material is still there, and um, your work, like finding that material and like keeping it, it like puts a stop there or like creates like a portal to something else, a different way of thinking about um, materials, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's something I've thought about too, which would be kind of an interesting experiment as far as the art world goes, because I mean, I don't have much experience with the art world as myself as an artist, but just from working at the art museum and just seeing how, you know, like these paintings are selling for $3 million, you know, like it would be kind of interesting to put a super huge price tag on this collage in the trash, you know, and be like, hey, this is like trying to transmute this freaking crazy problem we have, but also like this is sacred art because all these things came from the earth, you know, so this is like super valuable, you know, just
Yeah,
kind of playing with the weird structure, very like capitalistic structure of the art world is kind of like its own project in a way,
for sure.
because there's just like so many weird hypocritical ironic things about the structures that our lives are set up on right now, so it is kind of fun to play with that.
Yeah, you could give the guy who just duct taped a banana to the wall a real run for his money if you found a real high price for like something that was actually composed but still had some some repurposed element.
Yeah, who was the guy that duct taped a banana to the wall?
Oh shit, I don't know his name, but that was a couple years ago. It was fairly upsetting to everybody because a duct tape banana on the wall sold for like $200 million at MoMA or some obscene amount of money,
What's a
and there was like a week. This is back like early Trump years where we all had the time and energy to be outraged by the price of bananas.
Mm.
But
Yeah, it reminds me, the latest exhibition we just set up at the Aspen Art Museum was like a series of different pieces, but one of them was just a tree that my coworker found on the way to work, and it had some like claw marks on it from some creature, and we just like stuck it in the show, and someone I guess came in and was like, is the tree art? I just thought that was an amazing question. Like, not only was it funny, but it was also like, is the tree art? You know, like all these other pieces
Hmm.
are going selling for, you know, thousands of dollars. Just, and I think people actually have been wanting to buy the tree, which I think is really interesting.
Hmm.
yeah,
Because it's like, yeah, I mean, what if this tree was like valued at $1 million or something? Then what does that mean for all the other trees? You know, like how do you put a price
Yeah,
tag on?
right. Would that contribute to or decrease deforestation, you think, if trees were just the going rate for a tree was art market prices? A
Yeah,
very different industry killing the rainforest.
yeah. Well, I think it would have to do with, I don't know, it's just like so crazy when you get into money, because for some people it'd be like, oh, we have to have that tree, it's worth $1 million, you know, or there's a sense of like, oh, this is actually like worth a lot to us, um intrinsically, just as part of the world, you know, like outside of money. So I don't know, it's an interesting conversation.
yeah.
Definitely. So
just trying to like get
sorry, Alex,
into
what were you
what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was just gonna ask to clarify. So did you and your coworker is the museum okay with the fact that you put the tree in the exhibit, or did you sneak it in?
Oh,
Is this like a subversive tree?
No, it's fully part of the exhibit.
Oh, okay.
It's like
Right. Right.
yeah, it was approved. So it's kind of an eclectic mix of different pieces. So we're like, let's put the tree in. And the tree honestly was my favorite piece in the show.
Right on.
This is the
Yeah.
best thing in here. Yeah, no, they would catch on pretty quickly if there was just like a random object in there.
Do you ever like think about sneaking in your own work? Are you like, do you just have like a couple small pieces you might sneak in?
Well, we had to build a structure for this last piece, and so we all wrote our name on the inside before we painted over it. So that's something. But no, I mean, I think like we talked about as our crew, just we could do a show that would be awesome. You know, it's just it's weird. The whole contemporary art world is very strange. It's just I still don't know a whole lot about it, but just the way that things are chosen and valued feels very much about like who knows who, and not necessarily like whether this is benefiting society. I don't know.
Yeah, have
Those
you
I haven't
ever
on it.
considered like money laundering? That that might be a
No.
part of it.
With them, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. I don't know. There's an interesting book, The $12 million Shark, uh, that kind of talks about all of that and like how some people will buy those like, like $80 million pieces and buy offshore like storage facilities and go and like store it in there and get like a duplication done and hang that one up on the wall while the other one's like gaining in value and kind of as a way to have a tax write-off for their immense wealth. So
Yeah, it's like a whole thing.
yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
Got to get some of those people's money. That's that's the. I think I would settle for like 1 million of the $12 million shark. You know, from that scenario, I'd take a little bit of that and launder
Yeah.
some money. Hell yeah!
Was that the Damien Hirst shark?
Yep. Yeah. The one that's in formaldehyde.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like
Yeah.
Damien Hirst's paintings, like his um, just his more abstract ones. I don't know if either of you have seen them.
No,
I actually don't know his paintings.
They're pretty neat. I could probably like screen share some.
I am embarrassed to say I like. Actually, it's funny that you bring up Damien Hirst because I learned his name and about the shark like 2 weeks ago. I read this book, Alice Knott, by a guy named Blake Butler, and in it there's a description of people just across the world just destroying famous pieces of art. And a few of his make the list of
Nice.
fictional destruction.
Yeah, I honestly don't know that much about him.
Yeah, me neither. Aside from, I guess the shark's kind of the big one. Do you what artists are you like fond of or influence your process and your work?
Hold on, I have to let the cat out.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah, Damien Hirst is definitely like one of the example, like I think the example of like excess in art and stuff like that. Like he put like diamonds on the skull and Um, just stuff like that. It's kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah, he seems very like spectacle oriented. I think the
For sure.
all his stuff is very much like kind of about being in the presence of his stuff. I think that's the kind of a lot of the content.
Oh, interesting.
These are really interesting to me. Like
Why?
they if you look really closely, they're like scalpels, I believe, like arranged to look like cities and like just different medical instruments sort of laid out. Um,
Oh,
but
wow.
when it's
Oh,
zoomed out, it looks like uh, yeah, just a city. Oh, there's a banana. Check it out.
That's pretty neat.
so he is the banana guy,
I think he's
or no?
I think it's just next to the banana.
Oh, okay.
Maruzio
Okay, got
Catalan, or it's called Comedian.
it. Nice.
Yeah, I just love his like use of really thick um, paint. But I mean, that's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately is like sourcing of materials. Like, I wonder what kind of paint he uses, if it's some sort of acrylic, because acrylic is oil, it's like an oil byproduct. And I want to try to move away from that by like either using watercolor or like I'm really inspired by your like trash art. Like, that seems like a way to sort of get around like ethically sourcing, materials.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard also to, I mean, I use acrylic paint also,
Yeah,
and like toxic glue to attach a lot of the trash to the base, so it's
right.
like that sucks. But I don't know, I had this moment a few years ago where I was going through all my stuff and trying to get rid of things and throw things away and recycle what I could. And then I was just like having a really hard time throwing something away that like I couldn't give away or I couldn't recycle, and just like feeling really bad about it. And then I realized like I didn't create this system, like I didn't invent this object. I mean, it's not like, I think what a problem that happens a lot for me, or that I witness when it comes to like environmental justice or activism, is just this idea of like it's still so individualistic, where it feels like a weight that like an individual has to shoulder. And I do believe that we all have like an individual role to play, but for me it was just like I realized that for so long I had this idea that I had to save the world all by myself. um,
Mm.
and that's just like delusional, and that's also debilitating. And so um yeah, I think just like recognizing that I'm just like one human out of however many billion, um
Right.
is like a relief in a lot of ways. But yeah, Dustin, to answer your earlier question, an artist that I really appreciate is Cecilia Vicuna. She is a Chilean artist, and she does some like interesting, she has a series called Basuritas, which is like little trash, like little trashes. And she basically goes to different like forests or the ocean and will create little sculptures using pieces of driftwood and pieces of trash that she finds, and they're kind of offerings that she leaves. um and that I just like resonate with her work a lot.
Is this her?
That's awesome.
Yep. Yeah, she's really awesome.
When did you discover
That's really cool
her?
stuff.
Oh, yeah.
A couple of years ago, a friend of mine gave me one of her books to borrow, and I was just like, oh my God, this is amazing. And she writes really beautiful poetry, and she kind of is just also speaking to experiencing herself as part of the earth, and like just like the presence of the wind and the water as like a spiritual experience. And yeah, she does a lot of interesting activist work, like activist artwork as well. So yeah, I really love her work a lot.
Yeah, tell
Yeah,
us about.
those just the.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, the scrolling through the Google images just now with Alex, that looked stunning. I'm gonna have to check more of her stuff out later. Thank you for that. It's always nice, like talking to creative people to hear which artists I've missed and need to be looking at. So that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, the book that I read from hers was called About to Happen. And it's like a compilation of different interviews with her and essays and stuff that she wrote. So
Awesome. Very cool.
Yeah, I really like seeing like the influences too. Like I feel like whenever I hear about what artists influence a person, that I can see the ways that they've been influenced. Like um, Basquiat, like is one that definitely is. You can always kind of tell when someone is like fallen in love with his work, for sure. Um, that I was going to ask for you to tell us a little bit about your zines, your mini chapbooks. Like those seem to be sort of rooted in activist work, at least in the current moment. Like what is it? How to do anti-racism, or like a primer on it or something. Um,
Anti-racism basics is what it's called.
yeah, yeah, I really like that. Like the little chapbooks as like a basic introduction to like really big work, and like I think that that is a good way for you to achieve your mission of empowering people, because a lot of the times these things are so huge, like you said, and it's hard for you to take it on all on individually. Well, it's impossible for you to take it all on individually, but there are like small little things to do. And I think that's even embodied in the size of the chapbook as well. Like it's a little pocket chapbook that you can bust out anytime and like sort of have is like your like a meditation on how to be in the moment, or work that you can do, um, while also recognizing that it's just like yourself. And I'd like to hear your thought process behind that, and anything else that you'd like to say about it.
Yeah. Well, I've always thought zines were really cool ever since I first heard of them. And I always wanted to make a bunch of them. And then it just never happened for a while. And then when I did that first initial installation at the art lab, I wanted to give people like a little pamphlet or something to just kind of explain what this was, because it was like, Church of Earth, what the heck is that? And I actually I have coincidentally have this with me. This was the one I made. So I figured out that I could just use one sheet of paper, like fold it up. So that turned out to be a really cool format to just like see what I could fit on one sheet of paper. So yeah, I just kind of put them in on there, and then just like explained about the exhibition. So I included like all these different symbols from different religions.
Cool.
That were from clip art on Photoshop. And then like on the back. But yeah, and I just kind of realized this was a really good format to not have to worry about binding the zine or, you know, finding a complicated way to print it. I could just print this on my home computer. And what I started to do more recently is I just have been collecting scrap paper, because, you know, I'll get things in the mail that are just nonsense, but it's like these full sheets of paper that have a full blank side. And if it doesn't have sensitive information on it, I just hold on to them and just print like a one-sided design so that like the backside is scrap paper, because it's like, might as well freaking use this. It's like a perfectly good sheet of paper. So that's been kind of cool, because then each one has this weird like mystery side. I just wonder what it's like for people to receive it, if they get that it's scrap paper, or if they are like, what does this have to do with, you know?
There's like
But,
a secret code on the back that they have to decipher. You've probably got people
yeah.
puzzling over junk mail. That's great.
Yeah. Or there's one that's, my grandpa wrote a whole story of his life, and there's all these scrap pieces that are just like him interviewing his brothers and sisters about living on the farm in Minnesota. And so there's like funny little excerpts from that on some of them too. But yeah, I think there's a lot of potential to continue with the zines. I've been wanting to make one for a while called Self-Healing Remedies for Anxiety, because that was something that I was dealing with pretty intensely for a couple years, and just like was able to learn a lot of different tools and strategies for dealing with that. So that one I kind of want to do more than just one sheet of paper and do more of an actual full-on booklet. So that's on my mind, and I also want to create more of a full-on publication. The working title is Earth Spells, and the idea is that people could submit different rituals or practices or recipes or songs or anything that helps them connect to the earth, or like just to themselves. Just for anyone that's like, I want to connect with the earth, I want to connect with like my environment, but I don't really know how, because that's kind of been the struggle for me, is not coming from a religious background or having really knowledge of like my ancestry and how like what my ancestors did to like feel like they belonged in their environment, and so it's kind of been like me improvising for myself, like, how do I feel connected to the land that I live on? So that's been interesting too, to try to build those practices into my life. But yeah,
Yeah,
zines
that's
are fun.
interesting. Like Stephen Jenkinson, in his book Die Wise, said that like a big part of like a sense of place is knowing your ancestors, like and like actually physically knowing them, like knowing where their bones are in the ground, and going and visiting them. And so that's interesting to me, because that part of your anxiety is coming from not really having a sense of place, and sort of our reactions to that, and trying to I don't know, create a sense of place. Uh,
Yeah, I think it can be hard, especially in this country, given like the history of this country and like how we all got here. There's, other than like the first peoples of this land, like all of us came from other places, like ancestrally. And so, and there's like a lot of trauma in that, obviously.
mhm.
So yeah, it feels really complicated. But yeah, it is interesting that you bring up like knowing where your ancestors' bones are, because I lived in Fort Collins for at least a year before I realized that my great grandparents were buried in the cemetery,
Oh, wow.
because they lived in Timnath, which is right across the highway. And I went there and I was like, holy crap, like my family is actually from here, and I was living, and that just like gave me a deeper sense of belonging to that city, even though like I don't feel like a super strong connection to it. But now when I go back there, it's like I want to go to their graves, and try to like build that connection, and in whatever way, whenever like scraps and pieces that I can. Because yeah, I think it's like it's hard. I also, this is like a different tangent. But just like trying to figure out where to even live. Like where can I live that's like really going to be fulfilling for me, which is like totally a privilege. That's even like a generational thing. I remember talking to my grandma about that and just expressing to her that I just felt like I was overwhelmed by the opportunities as far as like I could move to a different country, I could live here, like where do I want to live where these friends are, or do I want to make new friends here? And she's like, whoa, when I graduated from high school, I could either be a nurse or a teacher. And I picked nurse and I stayed in my same like state. And, you know, it was just like simpler, but also the options were more limited. So she like couldn't relate to that experience at all. So I don't know, just thinking about how scattered a lot of things are, and like a lot of like my personal community of friends is really scattered across the country, and it's sort of harder to develop that sense of place and belonging when we've all like uprooted ourselves so many different times. At least I have, and like I know a lot of people that have. So
Yeah.
Do you find like having the Church of Earth both as like an online newsletter and like your online presence on like Instagram, does that kind of help not like make up for it, but does that give you some sort of like broader sense of connection, or is that totally separate, or is that community that you're building sort of does that help with that sense of displacement is probably the wrong word, but
mm. I think so a little bit. I've been kind of struggling with the whole Instagram thing, and feeling like, okay, this project is more to me than just Instagram. You know, like Instagram is meant to be like an aspect of it. But I started feeling like everything I was doing was just to post on Instagram about it, or like all the attention was focused or funneled towards Instagram. And so I kind of had to take a step back from that and be like, what do I actually want to do with this project that feels more real, and like actually connected? Because I realized that I haven't been feeling that connection through, or that sense of community through Instagram, even though it's nice when like people comment or like relate to things. And I think the really cool thing about Instagram is that I can, you know, connect with people that I would never meet otherwise. But I don't know, at the end of the day, it just started feeling really hollow. Like I wasn't getting like a real sense of satisfaction or connection from it.
Mm.
And so I'm trying to shift into like focusing more like how can I actually invest in the place that I'm already at and like the people that are here. But we did do a virtual community meeting last fall, and that felt pretty good. Like it was cool to be able to have people from all over be in the same virtual space. So that's something that I do want to explore more.
that's awesome. Yeah, that just in the couple people Alex and I have been talking to, that like kind of mixed bag that is Instagram and social media, and trying to navigate the ways in which it is initially a great tool and then sort of becomes its own sort of draining force that is almost limiting, and trying to navigate that has sort of been a thing a lot of people have said to us when we've been talking about process and stuff. And yeah, it's interesting to hear that like just that echoed from people in different disciplines and different approaches to art. I think we've all sort of come to that place with social media, but then, you know, this year, pandemic year and stuff, I think it's almost that dissatisfaction with it is almost amplified by how many fewer options there are aside from like internet connection. Have you, throughout the course of the pandemic, been doing much like digital or online meetings? I know you said last fall you were just saying last fall you did something. Has that been? I know it's at this point sort of moot point to ask how the pandemic has affected you, because it's kicked everybody's ass to a certain degree. But found yourself doing more art or more online meetings, or less, or about the same?
I think as far as Church of Earth as like a community project, I've definitely pulled back a lot as far as trying to facilitate any kind of community meetings or make things happen on that level. I've definitely pulled back because I've just been like, I don't know. My energy feels more limited with everything going on. Yeah, I think I got a little bit burnt out, to be honest. It was just like, I want someone to, I am finding myself wanting to be part of things that other people are facilitating. And not so much like, I don't know, just like not having the same energy or momentum to like try to like, hey guys, let's do this thing. But so in that sense, I actually have had more opportunities to do my own work, which has been good. And I'm kind of realizing like that's where I'm feeling really excited. It's just I have so many different things I want to make and work on. And now it's just a matter of like actually doing it. So when I look back, I don't feel like I really made that much art this past year, but I think I did at the same time. You know, it's kind of a blur, but I'm also interested in sewing and like learning how to make my own clothes and jewelry, and I've been getting into quilting a little bit. So yeah, there's like lots of different places where my creative impulses want to go. But I haven't really quite figured out how to schedule my time to actually, you know, like harness that motivation and do something about it, which sometimes is frustrating. I don't know if you guys relate to that, but
Absolutely, yeah.
Definitely. One thing I really related to was making things for Instagram. Uh, and like, I know a lot of the things that I do is I think like, will this look cool on Instagram? uh,
Mhm.
like it's a very specific kind of uh, thing that I'm trying to go for when it's just like a look, but like that. Yeah. And I know that I took like a pretty long break off of it back in like 2017, and I kind of documented the process of going back on it, and I realized how much it affects my process without me even knowing, because I even stopped documenting like going back onto it. It just kind of like hijacks my brain and I start doing it like subconsciously, unconsciously, and um, it I struggle a lot with like wanting to have a platform and a place to share, but also wanting to cut it completely out of my life. And it's like, I don't know if I just find someone to be like a social media manager, but I know, I just don't have that kind of money to like offer them that service, like ask them to do that service for me. Um, but, uh, and one thing that I try to do to organize my time is read about habits. I don't know if either of you read about habits at all. This book right here has been like a lifesaver to me. It's called Essential Zen Habits, and he like kind of takes you through like 6 weeks of creating a habit, and it's all about adding habits rather than taking away habits. He does give you some advice on how to take away habits, but it's more about how to add them, because that's actually an important part about taking them away. And the whole first week, it's really interesting. It's just like a reflection about what you want to do. Like you don't even do it at all for the first week. And then the first week, you're only supposed to do it for a minute, because it's just about like sitting down and like getting into it and getting like the dopamine rewards for like opening up the computer and getting into the program that you want to work on, or
Mhm.
getting down and doing like the exercises or whatever. And um, I think habits are like crucial if you want to have any sort of like serious disciplined practice, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely like building a routine. I mean, my friend Ellen, she always says you just go to the studio and show up, even
Yeah.
if like you don't do anything, just like show up. And so this past week I kind of started experimenting with that. Like first thing I do before I check my emails or anything is just I have a little studio in my parents' garage. So I just go in there and like either start organizing something or I'll do something in my sketchbook just to try to build that habit. And it's interesting, like I'll go in and I'll first feel uninspired and kind of what am I even doing here? And then eventually I'll find something to start tinkering with and then it'll build into something else. And so it's
Yeah.
like, okay, just like make space for something to happen.
On average, how long does it take you to make like one piece? Is it like, do you have multiple pieces going at once, or do you just kind of focus on one until it's done?
Yeah, I definitely have multiple things going on at once. I mean, I'll have like a sewing project that's half finished. I have a lot of half finished projects. And then I'll have some collages and, you know, I don't know, because I haven't been super consistent. It sometimes will take me like 6 months to actually be like, this thing's done. Even if I'm not really working on it, it's just like, I'll start and I'll be really excited and I'll come back 3 months later and be like, oh, okay, I guess I'll work on this again.
Right.
You know? So, but a lot of the, trash collages, some of them come together really easily. I'm just like, oh, that's a good composition, done. Like, don't need to overcomplicate it. And other things, like it just takes longer to kind of shift things around and add and subtract to get it to a place where it feels like it's cohesive and done.
Mm. Has it does like I'm relating to this from my own like process, but like did subtraction or um like not knowing when to stop, was that ever like an issue for you? Because it is for me. Like I'm always trying to add more and more, and it never has really dawned on me that, oh, you can also take stuff back.
Yeah, I've definitely overdone things plenty of
Yeah.
time. Yeah, I tend to overthink things generally. And so I remember when the pandemic first hit last year, I just started making a ton of collages, really just loose and messy. And my motto was just fucking glue it. Like,
Mm.
stop thinking so hard. Just like, because normally when I make collages, like I used to do super detailed collages and I still do sometimes, but um I would like lay everything out, get everything finally into the right place, and then I'd have to take each piece back up and then like glue it down or tape it down, and it was just like a huge
Right.
pain in the ass. And now I'm just okay, glue this down, glue this down, glue this down. Like, don't worry about it as much. At least with like just working in my sketchbook kind of thing. Just try to not to take it so seriously.
That's good. That seems like, especially like Alex was saying, in terms of, and like you were saying, just trying to force yourself to get into the habit. Yeah, just letting yourself make a couple throwaways, even if they're not your favorite. Throwaway probably not being the operative word for the trash collages, but still,
Yeah, definitely. Just like keeping the muscle active, I think is important.
definitely.
Because I don't know about you guys, but sometimes it can take me like days or like a week or more to get into the mood to even make something. If I haven't been doing it for a while, it's like, okay, I have to be I have to be like mentally and emotionally prepared to actually create something. So I'm just trying to like keep up the habit, even if it's just 5 minutes a day, like doodling.
For sure. It can be kind of a spiral too. Like if you don't do it for a while, it just kind of spirals into itself, and you're like, well, I didn't do it again today, so not gonna
Mm-hmm.
do it tomorrow. Not gonna do it the day after that. Yeah.
Yeah, it just gets harder and harder to start.
I think that's why I do so many different things as well. I don't know if you can relate to this, like, because I just won't be in the mood to draw for like weeks, but as long as I still have it in my rotation, then like I'll be in the mood while I'm working on something else, like music or whatever, writing. Um, it's kind of a way to keep myself passionate about whatever I'm working on.
Yeah, totally. I think I definitely go through those cycles too. And I'll also go through periods of time where I like am too tired or uninspired to even make anything. And I have to remind myself that that's also part of the process, is like resting and just, letting things start to bubble up again. It's only in like the past 2 or 3 weeks that I started to get some momentum to even create a schedule and try to build a routine. So yeah, it's interesting. It's gonna be challenging.
Yeah, it's definitely a constant back and forth struggle, remembering to work and then remembering to rest is always it's hard to do both.
Mhm.
But I mean it seems like that's kind of the cool thing about like Alex was touching on too, and like what you mentioned, just the different disciplines, it's like you've got the sewing and the newsletter you put out and everything. Do you find those like feeding into each other pretty consistently, the different disciplines you work on, or are they pretty separate for you?
I wanted to add on that too, like just like for me personally, looking at your projects, like I see a lot of similarities between the portals and the altars. Like those seem almost like kind of to coexist with each other, but I'm not sure.
Mhm. Yeah, I think as far as like my personal artwork, a lot of the same themes come up. I think no matter what I'm doing, it's some form of collage. Like, even when I'm building an altar or something, like that's bringing together all these different elements. And then when I'm sewing too, it's like kind of experimenting with quilting and like bringing together these like random scraps to create a new piece. So I think that's like a common thread. Um, but like for me, what's been kind of difficult to figure out is like what's the distinction between like my individual artwork and then Church of Earth as a project, because I'm wanting that to kind of be its own thing that's like separate for me in a sense. Um, even though it started out as just my artwork. Um, and so it's kind of been tricky. It's like I don't want this to be about me. I want this to be like for everyone and for other people to contribute to. Um, so like when I'm doing the newsletter, or even when I'm making a zine for Church of Earth, it's like I feel like I'm trying to separate myself as an individual from that and focus more on like this is for this other entity. But like if I'm just doing my own thing, I feel a lot more free to just like do whatever. But it sort of feels like there's a brand that I have to like cultivate and maintain, which is, just part of starting an organization, I guess. And I don't even know if it would be considered an organization at this point. But yeah, kind of a funky space for that project right now. But yeah, those feel distinct to me. And then I also have my graphic design practice, which is like more of a trade that I do for money. But the graphic design definitely, I mean, that's what I studied in school. And so that definitely informs like zine making, website design, the newsletter, and then like a lot of my compositions I think are really um, I see a lot of grids that start to come out that I think is influenced by like graphic design and just like designing layouts and those kind of things. So um, yeah, there's like definitely a crossover of design and then art within my work.
And like elements of like minimalism and uh, simplicity, like where the eye wants to go or something. maybe something like that.
Kind of, yeah. I think it's more intuitive when I'm making like a collage or something like that. But yeah, if I was to analyze it, I could probably come up with something. Yeah.
Would you say it's like different modes of creating then too? Like something like graphic design is a little more analytical, and then the other ones, yeah, more intuitive, like you said. So
Totally. I mean, like with graphic design, especially when I'm working for a client, it's all about taking the information, like there's raw information, and then trying to like organize it. And you're thinking about hierarchy and where you want people's eyes to move, and um, like what action you want them to take, basically. So it's like definitely a lot more analytical, but there's like definitely an intuition to, like the overall layout. But yeah, it feels like a definitely more of a left brain um, type of work.
but they both have like kind of give and take between each other, like your
Mhm.
personal practice and your graphic design practice, like different elements of it like show up. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely enjoy working in lots of different mediums. Having that variety is really helpful.
That's great. So aside from trying to get back into a routine and stuff, do you have any big projects or aspirations for your work in any of those mediums coming up here? Anything in the works?
Yeah, I mean, I actually this past October I was supposed to be doing an artist residency in Denver, but it got canceled.
Yeah,
But I was like, really excited about having that opportunity to actually just put together some kind of like cohesive grouping of the stuff I've been working on. So I want to still continue with the trash art and get more into that and document it in a way that's presentable. And then I've also been working on a magazine with some friends, um, which we're in the process of getting that printed at the moment, which has been a little bit of a struggle. But um, it's called Repave, and it's all about mental health and healing. And so it's like an arts and literature anthology of different people's experiences and artwork and fiction and poetry, that's just related to like trying to figure out how to be alive. um, but I think it's
very
pretty
cool.
cool. It's gonna be hopefully printed by the end of the month. Um,
Nice. Well, yeah, we'll have links to all that stuff available
Yeah, that's exciting.
to the
cool.
Repave magazine
I'll
and your
put a link.
website and whatever else. Yeah, just pop them in the chat. Cool.
Cool.
Is that going to be a periodical thing, or is this one issue most of what you're thinking about so far?
I think we probably would like to do another one, but it'll probably just be like an annual thing because I mean, we started working on this in July and we're now printing it. So it's been a lot. It's been a long haul. And a lot of that has been just kind of learning curve, like figuring out how to even create a process for it. But yeah, it's just this one is just kind of an initial experiment and we'll just see if we want to pick it up again or not.
Well, that's awesome. Very excited to see that for sure.
Yeah. Check it out.
Absolutely. So that's repave.org. Is that the spot
Yep.
that folks can go if they want to look at that? Awesome.
Yeah, you can pre-order now if you want.
Very cool. I'll do like a little screen share of it too.
Yep, this is our little baby.
Very nice. Like the colors and
Yeah.
the words here. Repave. Very
Yeah, my friend
nice
Ryan did the
feeling.
logo.
Did you make that logo, the repave logo there?
No, my friend Ryan did.
Very cool.
The three of us have been collaborating on a lot of different aspects of it, so it's pretty cool. It's like a nice variety of like different aesthetics that go into it. So
Yeah, what do you think about
Oh,
that
yeah.
when you collaborate with people, especially people that you kind of know and enjoy being around and everything, how it kind of changes the art? That's always really enjoyable. Like what you all come together with and how it's its own little thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely, that's something that I wanted to do a lot more this past year, was have more collaborations with people and just, not just do everything by myself. And so that's actually shown up a lot in my life, like more opportunities to be part of a team. And it just feels really good to know that like other people are holding different parts of the project. There's like some relief in that. And also it's just like fun to hear like what other people's ideas are that I never would have thought of. And then just to see how it creates something entirely new from like everyone coming together.
For sure. I think that about wraps it up for us. I don't know. I think we've been going for like an hour and 20 minutes or something. If you had anything else that you wanted to say, or
Yeah, I mean, thank you for having me. I'm definitely starting to get a little sleepy.
yeah, me too.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for for joining us and letting us know about everything you're working on, and can't wait to check everything out.
Yeah, it's been fun to talk about. I appreciate it. Yeah, I just hope everyone takes good care because shit's weird.
Likewise, yeah.
Very true.
Take care.
Yeah.